In this episode of the Stately Homes of Norfolk, I've come just 9 miles from our city centre to a quiet site that was, 900 years ago, part of the outlying lands of the Abbey of Bury St Edmunds. But in 1536 the Reformation took place. Henry VIII grabbed the lands and the house, parts of which are incorporated into the present building today, here at Kirstead Hall. This fine Grade 1 listed Elizabethan manor house began in 1570. The brickwork has the attractive blue diaper decoration and it has a pin-tiled roof and these stepped Flemish gable ends. The house and the barns are all Grade 1 listed, and to have this number of listed buildings within such a small area is quite rare. Through the centuries there have been numerous owners. For the past 35 years it's been home to Dermot and Judy Murphy. Good. Let's go and sit down.
What a lovely day.
I know, it's
fantastic, isn't it?
Various families owned the property, the Kirsteads, the Canterburys, but nobody of any great importance really, so the house largely sort of fell into decay, I think, over the centuries, and then the farm next door bought it. They had it around the turn of the century, but they never really lived in it properly, and in fact the hall in the house was used to store their corn, and our bedroom on the first floor was used for the hay, and there were pigeons flapping around. And the previous owner was very good. He was an historian called Lionel Edwards, and he bought the place in 1960 and basically started to do it up, but in the end his wife got fed up and she said either we both go or I go, so they both went. The property, we think, was built by Sir Thomas Godsalve, one of his stewards, who was busy lining his pockets as well, one of Henry's men, and this is one of several that the family collected. We know that he was painted by Holbein and that he was very much a sort of fringe courtier, I think, unprincipled, we're told, because none of the family actually had their heads chopped off. So that's what we know.
We were shown this house and they brought us through the beautiful Norfolk lanes, and it was snowing. And we looked at Kirstead and there it was, standing there in all the snow, what have we.
This sort of house, we didn't want to be a museum or a sort of pastiche or preserve something like that. We wanted to be a lived-in house for our family, really, and friends. We don't own the house. The house owns us. Is really the way to look at it. And we must, I think, because there is a local, make sure that people can enjoy it too, and that and that's one of the reasons actually we opened the house up through invitation to view, really, so that other people could see it.
When we first of all came, I couldn't work out what these target sort of bullseyes were. I thought they were children that had put them, for little guns with suckers on the end. But when the Norfolk Archaeological Society came, they got really quite excited about them, and they said they are apotropaic marks. We'd never heard this word apotropaic. Apparently it comes from the Greek, meaning good luck. And it really is to ward off the evil spirits, keep them out of the house, and to let the good spirits come into the house. And in fact, there's just a slight mark of an M for Mary, for Our Lady. So, the Virgin Mary would also keep the house safe.
So it was like a blessing on the porchway.
Absolutely, very much like hidden middens that you get in chimneys.
And also interestingly, here in the porchway, these benches, there's some history behind these.
They're original benches. The pages would have sat here, waited for their master and mistress to come home, because the drive would have been there, it would have been come straight down, it would have swept round, and then they would have waited on them hand, foot and finger when they came. And do come in.
Thank you very much. So Judy, tell me about this room that we're in here.
Oh, well, this is the Great Hall, Chris, and we do know that all of this room was completely panelled, all the way around, lovely, lovely panelling. But the interesting feature was it had the most wonderful fireplace, which was here. And we know that the Osbornes, the Lord Canterbury's family, who lived in this house. They own this hall, they own Seething Hall, but they also own Great Witchingham Hall. That particular fireplace and all the panelling was taken to Great Witchingham. And we understand that Mr. Bernard Matthews' turkeys really enjoyed the panelling when they lived in the house. But you'll see that Mr. Bernard Matthews, the late Mr. Bernard Matthews, used to sit in front of our fireplace saying how beautiful his turkeys were.
Chris, another thing we show here are these albums to visitors if they want to actually look at them. And what they are, they're about 100 years old now, and they represent the family, a snapshot of a family going back over 2 or 3 generations to the First World War. So pictures of Ypres and telegrams and letters, which people did in those, kept their telegrams and letters, and then sort of social stuff as well, people getting married.
And this is all part of your family?
This is all, and extended family as well. So basically this is several generations of family, and it's all sort of here together in one sort of roof.
This actually was the secondary parlour. The primary parlour was the room above. Now this is the room, of course, that Edward Seago used as his first studio. And in the books it says that his mother made muslin curtains for the windows, and Seago himself whitewashed the walls.
One of the lovely features is this, the windows here,
yes.
And the angle in which they all...
Well, that's the settlement, you see, when it was new. This, because we're on very heavy clay and the house has no foundations whatsoever, the house is a new build, settled. And it's a very good indication of how good our dinner parties are, because when our dinner parties are really good, they become vertical. Whether we're lying horizontal, I don't know.
And when you came in here and discovered this was Seago's studio,
yes.
were you studiously searching for hidden
Absolutely.
Seagos?
We've searched underneath the sofas and the armchairs, everywhere.
Nothing.
But he didn't leave one picture behind.
The parents of Edward Seago lived in the village, and when they finally agreed their son could become an artist, because it was a great big step, they thought, our son being an artist, they just wasn't their cup of scene at all. So they hired the room here, and curiously enough the light must have been very bad, because we faced southwest, so it wouldn't have been a lot of good for him. There are 3 dovecots in the vicinity locally. There's one here, and there's one in Brook itself in Dovecot Close, and there's another one on the way to Burapton coming out of the village, which has been converted. And the reason that they were all sited close to one another is that when the buildings were full of doves, they used to strip all the fields. So the idea was that everyone got a sort of even stripping, if you like, of their crops. The dovecots are situated on the corner of a field, and you can make out the outline of one here. This building here, we think, used to have a wooden section where the plinth is. May have housed a wooden structure, and you can see the different brickwork, the size and the colour and everything else.
Right.
Inside, Chris.
Thank you.
So here we are. The roof has been replaced, and you can clearly see now that the cupola at the top is actually made of fiberglass. Originally, Chris, we think there would have been 469 pigeonholes here, and they're beautifully built. Looking over here, as one can see, those doves actually would have come out of the little nesting boxes and perched on these little ledges all the way around. They've since been shored up with these pieces of wood and metalwork to go through them, basically to hold the structure together. This hexagon in the middle is interesting and is unusual, because originally there would have been a ladder and a wheel on the bottom of the ladder which went around here, and then there would have been a post and 2 spars, and so the person would have climbed up the ladder and then got the young squabs out of the nesting boxes, and it's those that were used for eating. The idea of these dovecots goes back. The Chinese had them, the Egyptians had them, and the Romans imported them into this country, as well. They're all over France, and so, as you probably know, and people who were important had them, so monasteries, lords of the manor, that sort of thing.
You always think you're preserving a house like this for future generations. We'll all be dead and gone, but the house will just go on and on and on. And I think whether a house is large or small, if you're looking after it, you're just a tenant in time, really, aren't you? You're just a conservation person.
Kirstead Hall, very much a family home, as it was 440 years ago. There's 3 generations of the Murphy family live here, and as Dermot and Judy have told us, they're very much looking after it for the next generation. Well, it's been a wonderful, enjoyable day here, and I'm fairly confident that this wonderful manor house will be with us for many centuries to come.